This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore! Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. It is Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. Welcome to the Monday Night Raw review, everybody, as we are about to talk about Monday Night Raw that took place, what was it, Denver, Colorado, last night. One that came off the heels of the Bash in Berlin event that I thought was pretty damn successful, depending on how you measure it. It was one that was wrestling heavy, light on storyline progression, but it set up the Bad Blood event that is only 1 month away. And we've got a lot to talk about this tonight as we review everything that happened on Monday Night Raw. But before we do, we're going to give some shout outs to some new patrons of the show. And Martin Miller, thank you so much. And Tario, I think I gave you a shout out already, but if I didn't, there's your second shout out. But Martin Miller, thanks so much for joining us on the NXT Plus side of things. Hope you enjoy your ad-free experience. You can join everybody else in the Patreon side of things and get yourself into the door ad-free for as little as $1 a month, but also getting on the actual Discord server is a lot of fun, as it's an open server that's available for all patrons to talk about wrestling anytime, and especially during live events. But let's get into it, as we had Raw open with Wade Barrett standing inside the ring. He welcomed a new play-by-play voice announcer, Joe Tessitore, I think that's how you pronounce it, and he shook Barrett's hand, and he talked about the Bash in Berlin event, talked about a European crowd that reminded him of the Denver Broncos crowd. Crowd cheered for themselves, of course, and then a package of the Bash in Berlin review started. And so they welcomed us to Raw, Wade Barrett, and I have to say, Joe did a decent job. And I have actually never heard of him. I've never heard his name until they announced it, but listening to him, he did sound familiar. I do think he does have a really nice play-by-play voice, and it seemed like he generally knew what the product was about and knew what was happening in the storylines. And I think he did a really nice job for his first night. Could he add a little more emotion to his voice? A little more excitement? Maybe. But that's really the only critique I have, is that announcer spot outside of the mainstays of Cole or Corey Graves or Pat McAfee. It's been a pretty big revolving door for that spot. So it'll be interesting to see how long he lasts. I hope for his sake and for ours that it's a long-term relationship. But so far, I think it was a successful night one on the job. So welcome to Joe Tessitore. And then we got the World Heavyweight Champion Gunther shown arriving in the arena. Footage of Punk walking through the backstage area. Very much a sports-like type of feel to the show, which has been, I think, one of the themes of the Triple H regime. And Rhea Ripley then comes out. Crowd goes crazy for her. But then Ripley, even though we were welcomed by Wade Barrett and the announcers, we were then again welcomed by Rhea Ripley to Monday Night Mommy. So I guess she's put a spun on it. How many times have we heard that, right? Monday Night Rollins, Monday Night Mommy. I mean, everybody puts their name, insert name into Monday Night, and you get your catchphrase. But Rhea Ripley said she's not finished destroying the Judgment Day and recalled pinning Liv and was about to call for a title shot when she was interrupted by Dominic Mysterio, and he got some pretty heavy boos, as expected. He got a black eye from the match at Bash in Berlin. Looked pretty brutal. Dom was booed, as we said, and he walked to the ring, stood on the apron, and said that Morgan is still recovering from what Ripley did to her at Bash. And then Dom accused Ripley and Damien Priest of taking advantage of him and Morgan and saying that they were jet-lagged and were tired for other reasons, which was pretty funny. And then he said that Morgan is banged up but not afraid of Ripley, and she'll beat you, and she'll beat you. Or she beat you before, she'll beat you again. And he started talking about winning the IC title. And then Ripley told Dom to let Morgan know she'll face her anytime, any place. Liv Morgan then hit the ring and tried to blindside Ripley, caught her with an elbow. Rhea went after Dom. He left the ring. Morgan hit Ripley. Leg was tied up in the ropes. Really well done spot that looked organic. That hurt. She got her leg caught. And then Morgan took shots at Ripley and went to ringside and kissed her forehead. That was kind of weird. But Damien Priest ran out of the ring and helped Rhea out of the ropes while Dom and Morgan hopped the barricade, and Ripley sold a knee injury. So pretty good open, and puts Rhea in a precarious spot now with this quote unquote injury. And that was one that played throughout the night as she was trying to, or Damien Priest was seeking medical attention for her while she helped Damien find a tag team partner that we all knew who it was going to be. All right. And so it was good. I mean, the injury would be, it's a good thing to have for Ripley because it's an equalizer for the size discrepancy between Ripley and Morgan. And with Morgan, there's something for her to target when these two go one-on-one. She can target the body part. There's a story they can tell there of Ripley trying to struggle through the pain and how badly is her knee injured, and Ripley continuing to just attack it, and is a ligament torn? You know, what's going to happen here? You know, I think that's the story, and it's a fun one. It's a fun one. It's not exactly original, but it's a tested, tried and true method that I think for this particular storyline will work out well. And you'd imagine that these two are going to go one-on-one at Bad Blood, but that remains to be official, as Adam Pearce would say. All right, Julius Creed, Brutus Creed, Ivy Nile versus Otis, Akira Tozawa, and Maxine Dupree in a 6-person tag team match. This, at first, coming off the hot open with Rhea, was it felt like kind of like a letdown. You wanted more of the Ripley and Rhea and Dom stuff. But this one brought us all in, I think. And I think the crowd is in lockstep with that, the way that they reacted to this, because the wrestling with Julius Creed, Julius, Brutus, and Nile, and eventually we get to Chad at the end here, but it's all just so good. And Otis playing his role well, while the heat has kind of died down between Otis and Chad, which how have we not gotten an actual match between Chad and Otis yet? Wasn't that the whole payoff? Or was that shove that Otis gave Chad 2 months ago the payoff? I know the American Made is working with the Wyatt Six right now, but that's a storyline that I hope they go back to, that we never got conclusion of. I mean, they just broke off and were like, oh, we'll see you later. I guess that shove was enough justice for you humiliating us on a weekly basis for 4 months. But again, Chad is so damn good, and Otis plays his role well. And you know who else I'm going to give really big props to? Even Wade Barrett pointed this out, is Maxine Dupree, because she's like found it this week. She put it all together. Is this something that's going to continue? I hope. Maxine was on fire, attacking Ivy Nile. She was smooth, aggressive. She wasn't hesitant like she has been in the past of, am I doing this move correct? It looks like in the past, some of her moves looked like she was thinking too much and not just wrestling. And you could see that in the ring. This is just like she put it all together tonight or last night. And I give Maxine Dupree props. The crowd reacted to her, so I felt good for her. And the announcers even said, I think Wade Barrett pointed that out too, that, you know, look at the fire in Maxine. It's a Maxine we haven't seen before, a side of her, and it's true. But what happened is she put it all together, felt the crowd, stopped thinking so much, and just went out there and kicked ass. Sure, she ended up losing. I don't care. Even though she lost, that's not what people are thinking about, is it? That's why wins and losses aren't such a big deal in wrestling unless you make them part of the story. This is really about Maxine for me in this particular matchup. And obviously Otis, or Ivy Nile, and Brutus and Julius all did their jobs and did them well. This match ended in 11 minutes, though. And after the match, Gable got on the mic and told the crowd to applaud the greatest fighting family in all of WWE. And he told them that the Wyatt sucked, that he didn't suck. And he complained that his match with Uncle Howdy was supposed to be a singles match, but Howdy got his freak show family involved. and he challenged the Wyatt Six to an 8-man street fight for next week. And Gable claimed his faction would get rid of the Wyatt Six for America, and he was interrupted as Howdy brought some of his members out, and he said that Uncle Howdy, Bo Dallas, he said it's been 375 days since his sanity crumbled, pointing to when his brother died, obviously Bray Windham. He said that his past is in the void now. He said the silence is deafening, but he can still hear it. Howdy says his life is no longer his, that he and his crew will collect a debt. Solid in ring, or solid on the ramp anyway. Promo. I liked it. It was a nice quick build for next week's 8-man tag street fight, which I would think would main event Raw, but also you have that fatal 4-way to determine the number 1 contender for Bronson Reed's IC title next week. So either one could probably main event the show. We'll see which one they choose. All right, Shayna Baszler with Zoe Stark and Sonya Deville versus Zelina Vega. Shayna Baszler beats Zelina Vega in 6.5 minutes. And it was a knee strike that did it. So Zelina Vega takes the loss here. Gets Shayna Baszler back on the winning side of things, which, as I just said, pro wrestling doesn't really care too much about wins and losses. But in Shayna Baszler's case, even things that don't matter in pro wrestling matter to her career because she's doing that little. So she needs victories. She needs anything. For those of you that are Shayna Baszler fans, for a night she got a victory. Do I think it's going to amount to much? Probably not. But it's a good start for Shayna. After the match, though, Pure Fusion Collective, what a terrible name. I'm sorry, it's a terrible name. It's a bunch of fun words that no one's used before it's too wordy, is all it is. But let's move on. They ended up beating down Vega. Lyra Valkyria then ran out in non-wrestling attire, joined Vega, but they fell victim to the numbers advantage. And then DeVille took the mic and told the crowd to shut up and show her respect. And DeVille said that seeing Vega and Valkyria laying on the ground was a reminder of just how pathetic everyone is. DeVille said no man could take them home and not a woman in the locker room could take them, period. And DeVille said, if you want to step up, shoot your shot. I don't know what this was about. DeVille's always been really good on the mic, though. I think that she has been underutilized as a whole for her career. She really started to shine when she faced Mandy Rose during the pandemic era over the Otis thing. Remember when Otis took her on a date and Dolph Ziggler interfered and stole his girl and that whole thing? Sonya Deville was the one who ended up trying to sabotage the whole thing with Otis and Mandy Rose. And that's when I think she really showed what she could do or is capable of and glimpses of it. And then it never stuck. It never really had staying power. But every time she gets on the mic, you pay attention. She's good. DeVille's really good on the mic. All right. CM Punk was then shown backstage. And then we talked about Bad Blood, which is going to be held on October 5th in Atlanta. Then we had, we had a bunch of CM Punk making his entrance, slap fans' hands at ringside, and none of them tried to swipe his bracelet, which was interesting. What would he do? I mean, that bracelet's pretty easy to take off. I would think they would just quickly get security to give Punk the bracelet. Like, that's a key part of that whole segment that happened with Drew afterwards. What if a fan just took the bracelet and ran? What would they do? Like, I mean, you might be able to take the bracelet and slowly slide out and exit the building. Like, pretend that you could do that. What would WWE do? Just hand Punk another bracelet from backstage? I don't think they have one ready to go. So it's pretty ballsy that you don't have some idiot fan who's just sitting there going, what would they do? I mean, you quickly try to do it. It would come right off. I don't care if Punk's bigger, stronger, faster. A bracelet easily slides off. No, I'm not trying to tell anyone to do it. Even it's snapped and broken now, so it's kind of a moot point, but let's move on. So Punk said he couldn't wait to get home to celebrate. And he played to the Denver crowd and said, well, it's a great day to be alive, and insert name of city. And then said they were celebrating. And he said he couldn't wait to get home to celebrate with his wife and his dog, but he had to make a pit stop in Denver to celebrate with fans. And he said the strap match he had with Drew was hell, and he got the personal issue out of the way, and he wants to get down to business. And he recalled saying he wasn't in WWE to make friends. He was there to make money, and said he would take that money in cash, love it from the fans, love from the fans, a direct deposit. So, weird. Okay. I acknowledge that CM Punk is very intriguing on the microphone. He's made a career out of mic work. And it's, at this point, I'm just going to call him Pandering Punk. I don't like Pandering Punk. I mean, it's working, clearly. What do I know? Fans react. But when I'm being pandered to blatantly, I don't know how fans just, how do you like that? I like CM Punk. Am I turning on Punk like I turn on Cody? No, but I'm getting Cody vibes from Punk. The good thing is I think he will face John Cena in next year's final swan song for John Cena. I think we will see a Punk Cena matchup at some point, which will be a lot of fun. But this version of Punk that's constantly pandering and it's a great day to be alive, and and he just puts the name of the city in. Just not my thing. Not my thing. Pandering to me needs to be done in a way that doesn't look like you're pandering. That you're always looking for adulation from the fans. You're always thanking them. It's always them that the reason you're there. And let me say the name of the city so you cheer for me. Punk doesn't need to do that stuff. It's weird that he's doing this. He's a softer Punk, I think is the way to put it, maybe, but it's not my favorite version of him. Also talking about taking the money in cash. He's there to make money, not make friends. And people are like, yay. Cool. So you're here to just take our cash. Weird thing to say. I understand that as a heel you can say this. And I appreciate Punk's his honesty. I appreciate his honesty. I do. Which I do think there's a lot of truth in that. He's not doing this for free. Weird thing to say to fans. Like WWE's mention of the highest grossing event. We'll get to that with Gunther. He mentioned it. It's just weird when you're talking about money in front of fans. It's just weird because we're the ones in part, a significant part, but in part, paying for your salary. So, all right, anyway. Punk said there was another person who had a tough battle and came out on top. And he talked about Gunther and said that he put Orton through hell and congratulated Gunther, who didn't come out yet, though. And he said, nothing can replace the chip on my shoulder other than that belt. And Punk boasted that he put Drew McIntyre to sleep and it's time for him to wake up as champion. Himself, anyway. He said that we're going to enjoy taking the belt off of you, talking to Gunther. And then he celebrated and stood on the broadcast table, and that's when McIntyre appeared at ringside and tripped Punk on the table and started attacking him. Wade Barrett stood up and tried to calm McIntyre down. I didn't know it was an announcer's job to police who attacks who, but okay, so Wade Barrett playing the good citizen that he is, I guess. And then we had McIntyre hit Punk with a Claymore, knock him off the table, and McIntyre hoisted him up, tossed him in the ring, and then hit Punk with another Claymore. And then we had McIntyre take the bracelet, broke it, hit McIntyre hit Punk again with the Claymore, shoved the beads of the bracelet into Punk's mouth. And the referees eventually stopped him. Adam Pearce did his weekly freak out of calling for medical, which is what he just does every week. That's what he's there for, is to just freak out on talent and then call for medical as if, which by the way, if medical needs Adam Pearce first to make sure that somebody actually needs medical, then the medical team aren't doing their job. Adam Pearce is not a trained EMT, but I understand it's pro wrestling. This is not a complaint for those who are keeping track at home of how many complaints I make per show. It's not a complaint. Just a funny observation, I guess, is how I'd categorize it, that you have Adam Pearce be the one to always call out medical when the medical team should make their own calls instead of just trusting the judgment of middle management. that, hey, yeah, we probably need medical. Well, how do they know? So anyway, we then had Punk on a stretcher. Punk was attacked again by McIntyre before being put into the ambulance. So this is clearly not over, as many of us expected. It's going to be the rubber match at Bad Blood. And I would think, is going to be Hell in a Cell. But who knows? It definitely is needed. Hell in a Cell is needed for this. And I think Punk could cut a really good promo here explaining why Hell in a Cell is warranted. That it's a callback to the first Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood. There's a lot of good things and fun things you could say about it. And the most important part, as I said, the match it's worthy of Hell in a Cell. It's worthy of it. So that's, I think, where we're headed is Hell in a Cell. But all right. We then had Dragunov versus Dragon Lee versus Dominic. So 3 Ds here: Dragunov, Dragon Lee, and Dom. The triple D. Do with that phrase what you will. In a triple threat tournament match for the shot at the Intercontinental title. And this was a fun match that ended it ended for Dominic fairly early when he was chased out of the arena by Priest after Carlito showed up and tried to help Dom. And it really ended up being a Dragunov versus Dragon Lee one-on-one match that ended with Dragunov beating Lee in about 10.5 minutes to advance. And he hit the Torpedo Moscow for the victory. A good win for Dragunov, who has kind of fallen off the radar a bit in recent weeks. And you can't focus on everyone all the time. And I didn't expect them to. But it's nice when they fall off. You don't even realize they fall off of the radar until they come back on it. And for Dragunov, I enjoyed his promos. I think he needs a little bit more of those to continue the momentum for himself. To see a little bit more of those pre-taped promos, kind of those smoky rooms backstage or whatever he was doing. That I think has been really effective. And his in-ring work is just... It's just fun to watch. I mean, Dragunov is fun to watch. Same with Dragon Lee. Dragon Lee also has been one of those guys kind of in the same category that they do a little bit with and then stop for 2 months and then do a little bit with and then stop for 2 months. So we'll see how Dragunov is treated over the coming weeks. Okay. We then have the, let's see, where do we go? Some backstage stuff. Bianca Belair and Cargill make their entrance, and they were there for the Io Sky and Kairi Sane versus Alba Fire and Isla Dawn on Unholy Union, a matchup that was going to earn the winner a shot at the women's tag team titles. So Cargill and Belair sat ringside, just looking obnoxious. They could easily be a heel team. I mean, they are a stroke away from a heel team. They don't say much. They got an obnoxious aura about them when they're together. They're both incredibly gifted. Well, I should say Bianca's incredibly gifted in the ring. Jade is getting there, but she has an incredible look, which is what she was hired for. Let's be real. I mean, there's no other reason that Jade was hired other than just her look, because her in-ring work at AEW wasn't exactly a all-world resume, but they felt that they could mold her, and so far they've done a good job to protect her weaknesses. But this team together doesn't say anything. They're now wearing sunglasses. They do their coordinated handshakes and little mannerisms and all that. That's just obnoxious, and they don't really have much to say. And I think, again, that's protecting Jade a little bit, so she doesn't have to say much. If Bianca's always the one talking, then you're going to say, well, why don't we hear from Jade? And then Jade's not ready, and then therefore you have a exposure of weakness. So I think that's the reason. But they're there for this matchup, and it ended with a bloody Kairi Sane, who got, I don't know if it was a forehead laceration or something, but she was bleeding by the end of the match. So hopefully she's okay. But we then had the winner here of Alba Fire and Isla Dawn getting the victory over Io Sky and Kairi Sane in 8 minutes. So the Unholy Union get their rematch against Jade and Bianca. Presumably at Bad Blood, but also we've learned that not every single storyline going on is going to have a match at that PLE, that oftentimes there's a build to the next PLE. So there's kind of every other storyline gets a match at the event, which is fine. Again, I'm a fan of 5 or 6 matches instead of 7 to 8 or 9 where it's rushed and you got to have an advancement in every story. But I like longer matches and fewer stories. Easier to digest. Okay, then we have Gunther come out. He said he's the best he beat the best version of Randy Orton. And Sammy quickly came out, though, and Tessitore reminded viewers that Zayn was the last man to beat Gunther. Crowd was really into Sammy here, and a Sammy chant broke out, and he spoke about the IC title being a workhorse title and listed several people who held them, like Macho Man and Triple H and Stone Cold and The Rock and on, and got some pops from the crowd. Always fun mentioning those names. And Zayn said he wants the world title, as Gunther used the Intercontinental title to be a stepping stone to the world title, and Zayn says he wants to do the same thing. And Gunther said that when Zayn had the title, he stepped down. Fans gave Gunther the what treatment. I didn't understand that statement, though, by Gunther, saying that Zayn stepped down when he had the title. Well, how was that the case if you're the one that helped build the prestige for that belt? You're the one that added value to that belt, and you're telling us that Sami Zayn holding that very belt that he beat you for at WrestleMania is somehow stepped down for Zayn? I didn't understand that. Maybe I interpreted that completely wrong, but Gunther then praised Zayn and teased him giving him a shot, but ultimately he told Zayn no, and Gunther dropped the mic and smiled before leaving, and Zayn said that he's watched Gunther's entire career. He's never backed down from a fight. Zayn questioned why he was backing down now, and Zayn said Gunther knows that since he arrived in the WWE, he's the only person who has beaten him. So Zayn said that you can run and hide, but I'll become world heavyweight champion. So Zayn and Gunther seems to be something they're building towards. Is it bad blood? I don't know. I doubt it. Maybe it's the event in October. Or I'm sorry, the next event after Bad Blood. I don't think it's going to be in Bad Blood because it's a rivalry that's just beginning. I don't need the title defended every single PLE. It wouldn't really fit the Bad Blood title. There's no bad blood between Zayn and Gunther, really. I don't think. They could put it on the show if they want to. I'm not saying they shouldn't. But I'm just saying I wouldn't mind if they build this for another month before the following PLE in November. I mean, I'm okay with that. But we'll see what they do. As far as Zayn getting the title shot here, I don't have an issue with it. Punk trying to get into the title picture only to be pulled back by Drew was something that we all expected to happen, but I think that Zayn is a logical choice. He is believable to beat Gunther because he's already done it, so that's what he'll really run his whole campaign on, is the fact that he's already beaten the unbeatable, and so he has a real chance to win. But when you look at the totality of this story that's just getting going with Gunther as world champion, you realize that very quickly that while sure, Sami Zayn was the one to beat Gunther, it was only after a 666-day run where people were ready for Gunther to relinquish the belt to move on to the place he's at now. And Sami Zayn is not the guy this early in Gunther's run to take the belt from Gunther again. Not by a long shot. But let's see how well they can convince us and put some doubt in our mind before their match, which, again, we don't know when that'll happen. Bad Blood or beyond. But Gunther just turning him and saying no was fun. You know, it makes sense. Not everybody should get a title shot. I know that the crowd boos that all the time when the heel won't give the title shot. But then we're supposed to cheer when the babyface does. And on the surface, it's, oh, look at the fighting champion and look at the cowardly heel. Really, you could spin it and say, well, what about the respect for the belt? Why does everyone deserve a championship opportunity just because they ask? It shouldn't happen. You're really just sucking the value out of that championship if suddenly anyone can do it if they just ask. If anyone gets an opportunity, it's nonsense. But they frame it in a way that is very much coward if you don't accept, brave if you fight everyone and take on all comers. But it's very easy to flip on its head when you look at the respect. You look at this whole thing through the lens of respect. I think it's easy to turn that narrative around. All right, so let's move on here. Braun Breaker did confront Jey Uso, who was revealed to be the tag team partner for Priest for the main event that night, last night. And Breaker said no member of Jay's family has ever beaten a member of his own. And Breaker said he was giving Jey a one chance to walk away, and he would lose if he came after him. Jey said, "Thanks for the advice, rookie." Jey said he would win the tournament, the Intercontinental title, and would beat Breaker's ass while he does it. And Jey yelled yeet and then walked away. So this, I think, is a very much a tell that Jey Uso is going to win that Fatal 4-Way next week. That's my prediction right now. He's clearly the favorite to win, and I think he will. But ultimately, whatever Jey Uso does on Raw is all short term. Everything he's done so far has been short term for the most part. There's been some longer rivalries he's had, but there's nothing that's really tying him to the brand right now. And that's for one simple reason. Roman Reigns. The reuniting of the OG bloodline. What does that mean? That Jey Uso has exactly 0% chance of winning the Intercontinental title, even though he's going to win next week, most likely, and go on to face Braun Breaker for the IC title. Does that happen on a Raw? Could. It could happen in Bad Blood. I think that's very possible. But when you look at this, you're saying, no, there's nothing that they're going to do that's going to force WWE to come up with some convoluted story to get him off Raw, even though he's a champion, to go on SmackDown, to reunite with Roman Reigns and Jimmy and Paul and maybe eventually Sami Zayn. That's all. We all know that's the destination, but how they do it is going to be a lot of fun to watch. But here's the thing. We're in September already. That means in the 2.5 months, we have the Survivor Series War Games match. A match that we have already preordained for a lot of us, even listening to this show and others. 6 months ago, we already knew what this match in a couple months is going to be. OG Bloodline versus the Rogue Bloodline, or however they label it. That's what it's going to be, which means in the next couple months, you have to have Jey Uso reunite with Roman, along with Jimmy and the rest, as I've said. You can't have Jey tied to anything long-term on Raw. Ergo, have I ever used that word on this show? I guess I did now. You're not going to have Jey do anything like win the IC title. Plus, Braun Breaker, you wouldn't give him a fair shot with the belt to see what he could do. He just became champion. So there's just two very strong reasons that Jey Uso, even though he's likely to win next week and create a fun main event, no pun intended, with Braun Breaker, you're not going to have him win. Makes zero sense. Even though Jey Uso does deserve a singles run. See, that's the other thing is they are putting the Jey Uso singles title run of any major title on the shelf while now putting him back into, most likely, the storyline with the Bloodline, which is going to further however many months he's not going to have an opportunity at the a singles championship. Because everything will be about Roman and beating the OG Bloodline and family and all that, and that's fun because The Rock's on his way back in a couple months and all that. That's going to be a blast. But if you're a Jey Uso fan that's like, hey, how has he not gotten a singles championship in the company? Well, it's going to be a little bit longer because not only is he not going to win the Intercontinental title, but he's also going to be in a group that's not going to be about him again. So, sorry. I love Jey too, but doesn't seem to be the time yet. It just keeps getting the can keeps getting kicked down the road. Sheamus, Ludwig, and Braun Strowman in a triple threat as Braun Strowman convinced Adam Pearce to put him in the match, even though he got destroyed last week on Raw with not Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed. The weird thing is, and let me just call out WWE because I was hoping they would get rid of this kind of stuff with the Triple H regime, but while I did love the Bronson Reed, Braun Strowman matchup last week that ended in a parking lot brawl, as Ron Swanson would say from Anchorman, that escalated quickly. I mean, they just started trying to kill each other in the parking lot. And it was a cool spot with Bronson Reed diving off of that ledge onto the car. And here's the problem I have. Y'all know where I'm going with this. How is there a camera inside the vehicle? And how are there 3 perfect camera angles on that random car that was in the parking lot? Yes, it was a flash. It was only about a second and a half that they showed an interior view of the car. But it's a complete, it's sacrosanct, or rather it's sacrilegious that you have a camera inside the car that you show the footage of. Don't do it. Don't do it. I mean, they did this with Shane McMahon and AJ Styles. Remember that? About, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, whatever the heck it was. With was it WrestleMania 33? I think it was the one I attended. So a good 7, almost 8 years ago with AJ Styles and Shane McMahon when he put Shane McMahon's head through a car window in the parking lot or in the backstage area. And there was a camera angle of head inside the car of Shane's head going through the window. Just look, how is that there? This is just a little stuff in production that I was hoping Triple H would notice and nix, or he just says, I don't care. The shot's cool, whatever. It was just a second, but I caught it. I backed it up and I'm like, whoa. Come on, Trips. Small thing. I know I'm talking about literally 1 second that happened on Raw, but it's symbolic of really some of the things that Vince did and Kevin Dunn did that I had issues with that just completely took me out of the moment. But again, I still love the Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman program that's going on right now. And Braun Strowman fighting through this matchup here. And he ends up actually winning the damn thing in 7.5 minutes to advance. So right now it is Jey Uso, Pete Dunne, Dragunov, and Braun Strowman in a fatal 4-way for the Intercontinental title next week. Here's what you know is going to happen. Since it's a fatal 4-way, Bronson Reed's going to cost Strowman in the match. Because they're going to pair off into their own program. Sheamus is going to attack Pete Dunne and get some revenge on him. So Pete Dunne is going to... there's no chance of Pete Dunne. And Dragunov could end up feuding, I don't know, with Dragon Lee. Maybe there's a personal thing going on there. So each of them are kind of paired off with one another, leaving Jey Uso to do his own thing here. And yes, he's made enemies of the New Judgment Day, but ultimately Jey Uso is the right person here. You're not going to have Pete Dunne or Dragunov or Strowman. None of them make sense for the Intercontinental title. All right. So we then have the main event here. Finn Balor and JD McDonough versus Damien Priest and Jey Uso. Non-title match. I'm surprised they didn't make it for the title, but I appreciate that they didn't. And a fun match here. A fun match, 14.5 minutes long, that ended with Priest and Jay defeating Balor and McDonough. And Ripley comes out limping with her crutch to try to help and even the odds. Liv is mocking her. And you knew the moment was coming when it was going to, Rhea was going to show that she's not as injured as Liv thought she was. And that happened, and Liv got a shot to the midsection with a crutch, but then ended up escaping as Rhea was wildly swinging her broken crutch around, trying to chase Ripley out, or Morgan out of the arena, and hasn't really got a hold of her yet. So the other thing is, with Priest, he hasn't really got a hold of Finn Balor either. He has gotten a hold of JD McDonough a number of times, hitting him with a razor's edge, hitting him with multiple South of Heavens, but yet we have not yet seen the payoff. We have not seen Riptide on Dom or Riptide on Rhea on Raw. And we have not seen Damien Priest hit any kind of finish on Finn yet, which is what you want. And I think they really need to heat that back up. I mentioned this last night on my review show of Bash in Berlin. What they really need to do is heat up and remind us just what Finn did. He screwed his partner, one of his best friends in the group at the time, out of his World Heavyweight Championship. They need to really remind us about that, because I think it's lost in the sauce. I feel like it needs to be brought back to the forefront because that's a big thing to bring up. It's the really the crux of why they're having this matchup that presumably will happen. So Finn Balor and Damien it's kind of cooled off, and I think they need to remind us with a couple of promos or even some videos. I mean, they don't even have to cut new promos. Just show us a reminder of what happened. And I think it'll be right back to where it needs to be. But again, a good Raw, I think. Good Raw with some, as always, some weird complaints that I have that many of you love when I talk about. I say that half jokingly. I also, guys, have a podcast called The War on Truth, if you want to check it out. It's the podcast icon that has the computer, the laptop with the War on Truth American flag above it. There's more than one of the show names out there, but that's the one that I have. It's growing fairly quickly. It's not about wrestling, not about sports. Heads up, it's about culture and politics. So if you don't want to hear about any of that crap, don't listen. So if you're expecting it to be about pro wrestling or WWE or AEW or sports or whatever, no. Politics and culture. All right. So there's your warning that when you click on it, it's going to be me, but it's not going to be about that. Not going to be about wrestling. All right. So anyway, I'd appreciate if you go check that out because I'll be dropping a new episode right after this one. Actually, I'm going to go re-recording a new new episode for that show that I have called, again, The War on Truth. You can go follow us on Twitter, by the way, at the WWE Podcast, or search wrestling_audio is really the tag, but find us there. You can also check us out on Apple Podcasts. Go ad-free for a week for free, or on Patreon for a week for free. If you want to try the ad-free experience before you commit anything to it, you can do that on Patreon at patreon.com/WWE Podcast, or on Apple Podcasts. Click that subscribe button and get yourself an ad-free trial right on the native app. You don't have to download anything extra. So I'd appreciate that if you do. This week, the mailbag's coming on Friday. Tomorrow will be the NXT review, and that'll be done by Memphis Mark, who does a great job every week on the NXT side of things. And then we'll be back into, well, hell, football season this week. My God. Football season starts this week. I mean, it's just, you blink, summer's over, guys. Back to school for kids. Or not just kids, teenagers and adults if you're into high school, college, whatever. And it's just crazy. And here comes football. And here's the thing I noticed about football. I'm not the smartest guy when it comes to football. I'm not going to pretend that I know much about football. I don't. The only reason I know anything about football is because I did fantasy for like the last 5 years, and this year, for the first time, I'm not. I may dip into DraftKings, but I don't have an official fantasy league this year, which is fine. I need to dip out of the emotional drain it was every single Thursday, Saturday, or Thursday and Sunday, Monday. I've noticed that the football season is one of the fastest seasons ever. I mean, it's faster than the baseball season. It's faster than the basketball season. It's faster than the hockey season. And I follow all those sports very loosely. MLB more than most. But it's just so quick. You blink, it's week 8. You blink, it's week 12. All of a sudden, we're talking about divisional playoffs, league championship. Like, all of a sudden, you're like, oh, my God. Or conference championship. Sorry. Conference championship, not league. That's baseball. Conference championships, and then you're looking at the Super Bowl, and then bam, it's, looking at the middle of winter and for the March Madness. That's what happens. Football is incredibly quick. I don't know why. I'm serious. Like, you look up, seriously, it's week 10. You're like, how did this happen? So for those of you that care about football, obviously a very exciting week. For those of you that don't, well, you got the MLB playoffs. You care about if you care about baseball, the MLB playoffs are coming up in about a month. Some tight races. If you're a Yankees fan, Mets fan, on the fringe of a lot of stuff. On the fringe, wins are very, very precious right now, as there's only 20-some games left in the season. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. Even if you don't like baseball in the regular season, a lot of people kind of tune in for the postseason. Postseason's a different animal. It's, it can be incredibly exciting. But anyway, I'll get off the regular sports stuff. We'll get back to wrestling in your feed here. I'll stop. Thank you for joining us here on the WWE Podcast. Again, I'll be back on Friday live with a mailbag for your ears. But until then, I'll be doing maybe a video or two for those on the Patreon side of things, doing a minute or two on the video side for you. And that's it. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.